Strap yourselves in, ladies and gentlemen. We got a beefy one today. What's up, guys? Welcome to the Blues and Stripes. Today, we're going to talk about a few different things because I have a lot to talk about before the season gets started next weekend. I will say a little bit of a caveat. I'm recording this on Monday. It's either going to go up Tuesday or Wednesday. It just depends on when I get around to editing it because I do run two other channels. So it just depends on the timing, but I'll do my best to get it up soon because obviously I still have to get up the preview for the Palace game on Sunday. But the first thing that I did want to talk about for this video, which I thought would be kind of fun because I think the last time I did this, it did pretty well, is I did manage to catch a few more bitter rivals with one of my comments. This one was on Facebook, so I'm going to hide the last name in the profile picture because I feel like on YouTube, showing the name of the person who commented is not as big of a deal since it's not as personal, but Facebook is a lot more personal. I don't want to be responsible for somebody getting a bunch of hate messages because Facebook is their personal account, but I will at least leave the first name so that way we can differentiate these people a little bit. But my comment was in response to a post that was made talking about how in the past 4 years, Chelsea have made 49 signings. And this was sometime last week. The reason the post was made was to showcase that Man U and Liverpool, 49 signings ago for them was like 2018, 2014, something like that. And so my response in defense of the club is talking about the fact that we've had a major rebuild here. So I'm going to do this a little bit differently than last time. I'm going to read these conversations as if I am the people commenting. Just know I'm an amateur voice actor. I'm not professional or anything, and I'm not really trying to make these voices sound real. But anyways, my original comment. Departures, as in how many? 61 players. The owners came in and cleaned house, so of course they had to buy a lot to replace all the players they sold. Now we're champions of the world, so the model does seem to have some merit. Now granted, I've not been happy with the board. I've made that very apparent on this channel and on my previous channel, but we are starting to see where some of that model does work. I think there is still a gap that might be exploited this season that we might see as far as a longer term picture. But as far as buying young and letting them develop together, it does seem to be working a bit. We're seeing the likes of Caicedo and Fernandes really start to develop a partnership in the midfield that is deadly. I think as well, you look at Palmer and Esteval and Pedro. Those three already are showing a lot of connection there that can grow over the next few years if they all stick together. But of course, rival fans are still bitter about our recent victory against PSG, so they had to come in and try to rain on my parade, and it didn't work. So our first victim here of being baited in was Nick. Yeah, until you don't want players and they still have 7 years left on their contract, a one-way street to disaster. We seem to be selling those unwanted players pretty well so far. How much did Felix go for again? So nice try, but I think that line of logic has already been disproven. Not to mention the several other big clubs who are losing out on transfer fees, Alexander-Arnold for instance, because the contract ran out. We don't have that problem. Liverpool sold Trent before the contract ran out. Nice technicality. Real paid a fee for an early exit, not a transfer fee, so no, they didn't sell Trent. How's selling Jackson going? And that's just the start. Signing players on city contracts will come back to bite Chelsea. I will say this comment was made before the two friendly games, and I will talk about that in a second, but that's rumors. Jackson doesn't want to leave, and Maresca still wants him. They put a ridiculous price tag on him because the other clubs were sniffing around for him. If they wanted to sell him, they would have already. Between Villa, Man U, and Newcastle, we could have easily made a decent profit for him. Keep dreaming, no one wants that donkey. Right, nobody wants a 24-year-old striker who's got 24 goals and 10 assists in 2 Premier League seasons. Go and take your bitter hatred elsewhere. So if he's so good, why buy more strikers? Give your head a wobble. Competition? Geez, I thought you had at least one IQ of football knowledge, but apparently I was giving you too much credit. And then Tony also popped in. Not really. We just sell them like Madueke. And then Colin responded in this little section, which he has his own section that I'll get to in a minute, but don't forget his bad attitude and poor discipline. Right, because you're clearly with the team every day to talk about his attitude. And discipline comes along with competition for places. Duh. Really, you gotta stop showing how low IQ you are, man. And like I said, we will get to Colin in just a little bit. But that's basically where that chain of conversation ended. And like I said for Jackson, we will talk about him a little bit more in detail. But it's just so funny to me that in their minds, this whole 7-year contract thing is still a bad thing. Despite the fact we just saw Liverpool lose out on a huge transfer fee for Alexander-Arnold. Real picked him up for free. And yet our way of doing things is still stupid? We're making plenty of money. We're selling all of these players. I don't understand. You'll see in a couple more of these comments, there seems to be this mentality that we're struggling to sell players when we're clearly not. We've sold a lot of players that I think a lot of people thought we were never going to. João Felix is a great example of that. And we made a good profit on him too. So I don't know where this mindset is coming from, but it doesn't end there. Next, we move on to Pete. Shite comp you won. Pete. Little does he know that I've been dealing with a lot of bitter fans that wants to make fun of the Club World Cup recently. Ooh, good. It's been a minute, so I wasn't sure if rival fans were still contributing bitter tears for us to drink in. I appreciate your contribution. Celebrating a comp on par with the Community Shield. How bad are you? Ah, yes, I've heard that one before, and it's still just as funny. The winners of the Premier League and the winners of the FA Cup playing in a one-off match is totally the same as a 32-team tournament with some of the biggest teams from around the world with a massive monetary prize for the winners. And yeah, I've already discussed that in a previous video, but the amount of people wanting to compare it to the Community Shield is laughable, but I'll get to something even funnier about that in just a minute. But now we move on to Darren. Champions of the world, laughing emoji, laughing emoji, laughing emoji, laughing emoji, laughing emoji. The title given to the winners of the Club World Cup. Laugh all you want. Doesn't make it less true and make you less bitter about it. How can you be world champion but not champion of your own league? Same way a country could win the World Cup and not win the Euros or Copa America? Same way you can be champions of the Europe and not be the champions in your own league? You're making this too easy. And I really don't understand that line of logic either. I've heard Jamie Carragher use that as well, so I'm sure that's where he's getting that from. But how can you be champions of the world and not be champions of England? Because we won the Club World Cup. The team that wins the Club World Cup are Club World Champions. That's how that works. The team that wins the Champions League are champions of Europe. That's how that works. It doesn't matter where you finished in your own league. I can't believe they can't seem to use logic in that. Because again, I'm sure if Liverpool had won the Club World Cup and not won the league or won the Champions League, I'm sure Liverpool would be sitting there going, oh, we're Club World Champions. We're the best in the world. I'm not even saying we're best in the world. I still think PSG are the best team in the world right now. But we beat them in the final, which makes us world champions. It's not that hard to comprehend. But when you're as bitter as a lot of these fans are, it is difficult to comprehend much of anything. But now we do get to Colin, and this is where a lot of his chatting decided to start. They have 43 players active in the first team squad and more than 15 out on loan. They're looking to bring in more and struggling to get players out due to stupid fees they are asking. They already sold plenty, and I'm sure they'll sell more. Why not try to get the best fee possible right now? There's still a month left. Learn a bit more about negotiation and then come talk to me. And ironically, that comment was made before we sold Dewsbury Hall, so I decided to come back and let him know. And we just sold Kieran Dewsbury Hall. If we can sell him, I don't think we're struggling to sell players. Practically giving away, and I know all about negotiations. Still doesn't change the fact you could be stuck with players on 7-year contracts and massive wages that refuse to leave. Given away? Do your research before you speak. We nearly made back what we paid. I believe we bought him for 35 and we sold him for 25 or 30. Plus, there are add-ons, so we still could. Not to mention Ugachukwu also sold today, and then Broya on top of that. I would say quit while you're ahead, but you haven't been once. Let's see what happens when the players you want gon' refuse and the ones promised first team places are booting off because you brought players to each position. Who do you think we are, man you? We don't give the players huge contracts, so they aren't inclined to stay to keep making more money. Honestly, it doesn't take long to do just a teensy bit of research to make sure you don't sound like an ignorant. And then, like I said, he went and commented on that other thread, decided to try to keep chatting even though he was so far behind at that point. But again, it just blows my mind that for some reason these rival fans think we're struggling to sell players, when clearly we are not. At the time, we still had a whole month left. Last season, everybody was talking about how big our squad was, making fun of how big it was, saying we don't have enough room for all the players at the club. And then by the season start, we were fine. We had sold most of them or loaned most of them out. I think the only ones that were struggling to sell at this point are the ones that were here at the beginning or before the owners took over. You think about Chilwell, you think about Sterling. Like, those are the types of guys that are still here because they were given bigger contracts because that's what they needed to show up. Now, with a lot of these players we're bringing in, we are making good profit on them because we've got them for several years, and they're not trying to stick around like what we saw with Sancho because their wages are too high. The wages are good, but from what I understand, the bonuses in the contract are what really help. So if they're not playing, they're actually not making that much. A lot of them are perfectly happy to leave if they don't have a spot at the club anymore. It's very, very easy to look some of this stuff up. But again, a lot of these people, they don't want to look stuff up. They just want to try to be bitter about it and try to rain on our parade. And it's not working. Then we have Jay. This one was kind of funny because he didn't even respond to my comment. He responded to somebody else named Richard. The fact is, your owner sold his hotels to himself pay for football. That should never have happened. That's not good footballing business at all. More like he found a loophole and exploited it. Not the first one either. That sounds like good business to me.
It's exploitative business, but it's certainly not good for footballing income, is it? Let's be real here. There are teams whose owners could sell billions more in assets.
Not good for footballing income? They were funding the rebuild, and now we're starting to see the dividends. We're making back plenty on player sales and now on tournament rewards.
That's my point. The money for the rebuild came about by means outside of football. That's not a good sign for football. It doesn't fly in Europe for a reason.
That's what owners do? They provide outside money to help the club grow. And obviously, yeah, we've heard a lot of rival fans talking about the owners and all the stuff they're doing when you look at selling the hotels, selling the women's team, Strasbourg, the way they're basically trading between themselves. And some people can take issue with that, but clearly there's no rule against it, or else something would have been done by now. If Strasbourg were in the Champions League, that's where there'd be an issue, and that's what happened with Crystal Palace. But they're not in the Champions League, so it's not a problem. And as far as selling the hotel and the women's team, PSR came in and basically tried to keep a lot of these bigger teams from being able to spend a lot of money. But instead, what ended up happening is a lot of these smaller teams, you look at what Newcastle's going through right now, they can't spend that much because they don't have as many assets to go through. So if you want to blame anything, blame PSR that we have all of these assets we can get money on, that we were funding the rebuild with, and now we are starting to make enough money to where we don't have to worry about PSR. But we have one final bitter rival fan to get to, and this one was probably the cream of the bunch for me. So first of all, his name is Mikey, and I'm sorry, if you have a name like Mikey, you should not be jumping into any debates because that's just an easy shot right there.
Champions of the world? You wasn't even champions of your own country or continent. The Club World Cup has about as much credit as a charity shield.
I've hooked another bitter one. You rival fans just can't stop nourishing us with your tears. They're delicious. Just take a look at my responses to Peter and Darren to show how idiotic your take is. I can't keep repeating myself, because calling out the fact we weren't champions of our own country or continent, and then also calling it the charity shield, both of those takes I've already shot down for being stupid.
Don't need to see your other comments to know how idiotic your statement was. You will be in a battle for a top 4 spot at this season. Rent, boys!
Ooh. He pulled out Rent Boys. We've never heard that one before. Come on, Mikey. Rent Boys? That's so unoriginal and lazy. Plus, not wanting to read how I already shut down other people who came at me with the same trolly comments isn't a flex. It comes off as scared. If you actually think you can prove my comments are idiotic, then go read them and tell me why. I've been drinking in bitter rival tears for weeks. You're no different, brother.
What's there to be bitter about? You haven't won a league title or even put in a challenge together for how long? You was playing in the Europa Conference League.
Winning the Club World Cup? Being world champions? Any rival fans downplaying that is just bitter that they didn't win it themselves. What are you, Arsenal or Liverpool? Those are the only two sets that I've seen this bitter about it. I guess Liverpool, because if you're really trying to bring up us not winning the league in a while as an Arsenal fan, hang on a minute, I need to laugh about that for a while.
Stick to American football because soccer clearly isn't for you. You finished 4th in your own, was playing 3rd tier for European football, yet claiming to be the best team in the world.
Never said best team in the world, just world champions. It's okay. I get why a low IQ guy like you wouldn't understand the difference. Also liked how you casually sidestepped my question about who you support because you know you have no ground to stand on. Must be a gooner then. Hope you enjoy picking up our trash, little bro. Also, another unoriginal American joke. I've heard that one almost as much as Rent Boys.
Liverpool fan who goes to every game, not just an internet fan like you, Rent Boy.
Congrats on living in England. Born and raised a Blue, watched them every chance I had on TV or live during preseason when they come here since I was a kid, so allow me to help you off that high horse. And as a Liverpool fan, I'll give you a bit more credit for feeling aggrieved about the CWC since you barely missed the cutoff for qualifying with your 2019 UCL win, but that's no excuse for throwing online tantrums about it. Just enjoy your Premier League trophy while you can, and we'll see you real soon. But that was the last I heard from poor old Mikey. Just couldn't handle being shut down so much. But it really does make me laugh knowing he's a Liverpool fan, saying that the CWC is on par with the Charity Shield, now the Community Shield. And then Sunday rolls around. What happened? What happened, Mikey? No Community Shield for you? Any Liverpool fan that's told me that the CWC is the same as the Community Shield, I understand why now. It's because you haven't won either this year. I get it. That's why it's the same. Understood. But it just cracks me up. He has nothing else outside of calling us rent boys, making fun of the fact that I'm American, which to be fair is not uncommon. I feel like anytime I get into an online argument, that tends to be the one shot they like to throw because there are so many dumb Americans when it comes to football. But it really just shows to me that they have nothing else outside of throwing that in my face. But yeah, I just gotta love how there's no reading comprehension at all. That I say we're world champions, which is a fact because we won the Club World Cup, and somehow to him that's the same as me saying we're the best in the world, which is not the same as saying we're world champions. You can win a tournament and not be the best team in that tournament, but still be the champions of that tournament. It's so funny to me how bitter so many of these fans are that they can't just look at reality and see what's in front of them. They have to rationalize in their mind that Chelsea are not that good. But since some of that was talking about transfer stuff, that's what we're going to talk about next, is some of the rumors, some of the players that have left, and just look at what we still need before the transfer window closes. So first thing that I wanted to do, I created a little bit of a spreadsheet here just to show what we have based on preseason so far. There are some players that might still be reintegrated. Obviously, there are players that we're looking at, and there are, of course, players that are injured right now. We don't know when they're going to return. So first of all, starting up top for our strikers, we got Pedro, we got Delap. Jackson is still a maybe, and I did find one article, this was written on Saturday after the Bayer Leverkusen match, basically saying that he was left off the bench. There has been sort of an agreement between the club and the player, which I don't know how they would know that. It's from BBC Sport, so I don't know exactly how reliable they are. I'm pretty sure I've heard the Daily Mail is the one that you should just never trust anything, or the Sun. But according to the article, it says there has been an agreement. He's okay with leaving, but they're trying to make a good bit of money on him. They value him more than 52 million, which is what Matty Aweke went for. And so it does feel like we are trying to sell him for maybe 60, maybe even higher. But according to the article, if they don't sell him, he will be reintegrated into the team, which doesn't surprise me at all. And I still think that is probably for the best. Because like I said, after watching the Bayer Leverkusen and AC Milan matches, I think having those three, as for Pedro, Delap, and Jackson, I think is going to be really effective, because Pedro and Jackson fit the mold of the type of striker that Maresca wants for this system. Delap is a little bit different and can maybe provide a bit more of a physical presence inside the box whenever teams are packing it in. So I'm putting Jackson in as a potential maybe for our backup there. Left wing, we've got Gittins, we've got George. I think George is a maybe as well, because we also have these two in the wings as well. Simons, I've heard both. It does feel like the deal is based on whether or not Leipzig want Nkunku back, because that seems to be part of the deal. Is we give them Nkunku, they give us Simmons. Garnacho, it sounds like he wants to move to Chelsea. It sounds like Chelsea wants him. So it's just about how much are Man U wanting to ask for him, which is a bit crazy to me that Man U is trying to make us pay more whenever he clearly doesn't want to be there. They don't want him there. But I think we're just kind of biding our time and letting the window run down and basically getting them to a point where they feel like they have to sell. Into the attacking mid, so technically Palmer's the only one that plays there and only there. I know occasionally Maresca will slide him out to the right if we have three mids in behind him, but realistically this is where Palmer will play in a majority of the games. So the question is, do we need to go get a center attacking mid? I don't think so, because I'll put them in green to show that they're players that are here but can switch. I think both of them, Esteval and Pedro, could slide into that position if we need them to. Also just remembered, Enzo Fernandez is another one that has occasionally slid up into the 10. So we have a few different options there that if Palmer's not available, we've got players that can move over from other positions, and there's enough cover in those positions to where we can afford to do that. I think last season it was hard to do that because, let's say Neto was the one, similar to Esteval, could slide inside. We didn't always have another wing that could take his position effectively. So now we have enough options around to where we could slide somebody in there and still be okay. Right wing, obviously we've got these two at the moment. I think both of them are very good options. Neto just has a lot of pace and can take on fullbacks well, and Esteval's a bit more creative. Does seem to have a bit better of a finishing touch than Neto does at the moment. But both of them provide just a lot of work rate and a lot of creativity down that right side just in their own unique ways. And obviously Palmer can slide over there if we need him to. I went ahead and changed George to orange because I realized that was confusing to have a player that's here that might be leaving and two players that aren't here that might be coming in as the same color. So that's the differentiation there, just for anybody who is kind of OCD about the stuff like I am. Then down to the holding mids. This is where very comfortable, I think. You've got Fernandez and Santos. Both of them are typically the box-to-box. They can get up and help in the attack, but they'll track back. Santos, I think, is better at the defensive side of things than Fernandez is. As far as we've seen so far, Fernandez is better in the finishing side of things than Santos is. Although Santos did play a brilliant assist to Delap for the fourth goal against Milan, so could argue that he also has a lot of quality in the attack too. But both of them are very good at getting up in the attack and helping out and then tracking back. Whereas Caicedo and Asugo are both very good about doing the defensive side of things, breaking up the play, good defensive challenges, very comfortable there. And then as far as depth in the holding mid, Lavia, of course, is another box-to-box player that we have, but he is very often injured, so it's hard to really say that we can rely on him throughout the season. And then James does occasionally switch into the holding mid role. Obviously, it's not what I prefer. I prefer to see him at right back, but he is capable of doing that, so that is another option for us if for some reason we need to rest both Caicedo and Asugo. But now we get into our defense, and this is where I want to showcase why I've been doing this, showing all of the players that we have that could play in those positions and players that may still be able to come back in. So right now, based on what we've seen in preseason, this is what we've got in defense. Kukurea and Hato both play left back. Chalaba, Achimpong technically has played both sides, but Chalaba is the one that would be starting there of these three. And then Tosin starts over Achimpong, but he has played that right center back position. And then, of course, James and Gusto are your right backs. As far as what else we have, so this sort of showcases what we currently have. Like I said, Chalaba will play right center back, but he's been having to play left since we don't have a left center back at the moment. Achimpong can play at right back, but it seems like Maresca wants him to be a center back. But at our left center back location, Colwill, I put him in red because he is out for most of the season, so we can't really say that we have him at the moment. Badiashile, apparently he was injured for preseason, but honestly, even if he was available, I don't think he's good enough. And I kind of put him alongside Disasi as two awful defenders that we need to get off our books. And then if people are talking about Vega, I don't think Vega's ready for the Premier League. And it does sound like we were looking to sell him to Bayern and Bayern won him. So I don't really say that he's a good option for us either. So this left center back spot is what we need to fill. Even with Colwill possibly coming back second half of the season, I still think we need another option here. Because first of all, he's probably not going to come back at the same level that he was at the end of last season, so that'll be a problem. But even with Chalaba being able to step in there, I know Hato can technically slide in there as well because he plays a bit of both. We need another option here, though. As far as what's out there, that's a lot more difficult to talk about. I do know that we were rumored with the sale of Vega, we were rumored to be asking for Kim from Bayern. I don't know which side of the defense he plays on, but I did say it would be nice to bring in a bit more experience because I think he's 28, 29. So it's going to be outside of our typical transfer policy, but I think that would be effective for us. I think it would be helpful to have a defender that is a bit more experienced as well as coming in from a club like Bayern. He's coming in with some pedigree, which would be nice to have. As far as left back is concerned, it's hard to say what else we have here. I think technically Gusto and Achimpong have both played on that left side before. I wouldn't want them to be there. So hopefully Kukurea and Hato can just stay fit all season. They can be pushing each other. I mean, Kukurea is obviously the first choice right now, but Hato's come in, looked pretty solid. So I wouldn't mind having that rotation throughout the season. But yeah, the left center back is probably our most needed position right now. I know Simmons and Garnacho are kind of the two that are happening in the moment, but I'm hoping that this will be on the radar and something that we're looking to hopefully get done this week. And if not, then by next week for sure. And then finally for keeper, so we have Sanchez, we have Jorgensen still. And then past that, all we really have is Slonina, which I'll be honest, not seeing much of him. I know it's kind of ironic since he's American, so I should probably know a bit more about him than I do. I know he's played for our U21s, I believe, and I think he played in the Olympics for us, but he doesn't seem to be that close to breaking into our national team, which is not a good sign considering how bad our keepers are at the moment. But I mean, as far as the keeper situation is concerned, I do feel a bit more comfortable than I did last season with Sanchez, but Jorgensen past him, I still don't really feel that comfortable with him. Even in that preseason match against Leverkusen, there were still a couple of moments where it just didn't feel very comfortable with him in there. His hands are not the best. He doesn't move his feet very well. Sanchez overall is a better keeper. I think he showed his quality in the past few matches, and I think he's not trying to play as much out of the back, which I think is helping. But is he world class? I wouldn't say so. I wouldn't say he is a top level keeper. I think he's good enough if we can make sure our defense is solid. I think he can keep us in a couple of matches, which will help us, I think, put on a title challenge this year. But I think if we want to win it, I think we're going to need a better keeper than Sanchez. And that's just for the consistency, for a keeper that is going to give us every single match a good, solid performance and keep us in the match. And I don't see him doing that. I see him giving us some, He will do it more often than not, but not enough to help us win the title. That's kind of it, talking about just the team and the transfers that we are looking at, some of the ones I think we still need to do. As far as players going out, obviously Dewsbury Hall to Everton I think is a good deal, because while we didn't make all of our money back for him, we still made a good amount back. And again, the add-ons that are there, I don't know exactly how much, but there's a chance we could still make back what we paid for him. And I just think there's no way he's getting into this team now. When you've got Asugo, you've got Santos coming in, even looking at attacking mid, now you've got Esteval that can slide in there, Fernandez can be pushed up, Pedro can drop in a bit. You've got enough options there. You don't need the likes of Dewsbury Hall, because we'll see how he does this season for Everton, but I see him as a bottom half of the table type of player. That's just my own personal opinion. He could still prove me wrong, and if so, I'll be happy for him, but yeah, that's just what I've seen from him, unfortunately. Two other sales that we made, which are good sales. We finally sold off Broja, and we sold off Ugachukwu, both to Burnley. I'll have to look up the transfer fees because I don't know what they are off the top of my head. But Broja is one, it's unfortunate because when he first came in, I was excited to see him. He reminded me a bit of Giroud, the way he played. Kind of that big body in there with good, comfortable finishing. But unfortunately, whether it was the injury or whether it was just the quality was good for his age, but he just never really grew from that. It became apparent very quickly because he went out on a couple more loans and just never hit the heights that we saw when he was on loan at Southampton. He just wasn't going to be that player that I think a lot of people were hoping he would be when we first saw him come in. So disappointing for him, but hopefully he goes on, has a pretty decent career at Burnley. Ugachukwu, he had a couple of decent performances here and there, but he never really looked like he was breaking into this team anytime soon. And then, of course, I think he got a bad injury that really hampered him. So he's one I don't think we brought him in for that much. And I think we sold him for a decent amount. He did okay last season at Southampton from what I saw, so I think it's a good sale to make. But obviously, we are still looking to offload some. Again, Nkunku might be leaving to bring in Simmons. Obviously, Jackson is the other big talking point. Newcastle desperately trying to replace Isak if he leaves. But outside of that, there's not really a whole lot of talk about what's happening. There might be some that happen in between me recording this and me editing this video. So if I miss any of those, I apologize. But it does feel like we are doing a good job at offloading some of these players that we don't really need. And even some of the loans that we're moving on. You think about Paez going to Strasbourg. Pender's got himself a loan as well. And I think there are even still a couple players that we saw in this preseason that are young and could do well for our youth team here and maybe get to play in some FA Cup matches or Carabao Cup matches. But you think about Roxaki, think about Walsh, Antwi as well. They look like they have some quality to them, but it does feel like they are going to need to get a move elsewhere because they need to start playing at a bit higher level to see them develop into players that could be useful for us in the future. But just one final quick word about Simmons and Garnacho coming in. I already discussed Garnacho in a previous video. I'm not really a fan of him. I might be in the minority, but a player's attitude is a big part of who they are on the pitch for me. And he's always just seemed like a punk. I don't really want that type of player here, even if he is talented. I'll say the same thing about a player like Bruno Fernandes or Emi Martinez. I don't want that type of attitude here, even if they are really good players. Even though Martinez is a better keeper than Sanchez, I still don't want him here because I don't like his attitude. But Simmons, I can't remember if I've talked about him before, but seems like an exciting signing. Having watched some videos talking about him and the type of player he is, does feel like he is going to fit into Maresca's system. I don't think he's going to be the same type of winger that we see from Gittins, where he likes to stay out wide and take on defenders, go down the line, cross it in. Simmons does seem to be a lot more the cut-in type of winger, so it might provide just something a little bit different out there. But he does seem to be very creative and very exciting on the ball. So he's one that I hope we get. And if it becomes a player trade, I'm sure we'll still probably pay because I don't think they'll value Simmons and Nkunku at the same level. But that would be a good deal to get Nkunku off our books and probably cut down on the price of what Simmons would normally cost. So all around, that seems to be a good deal. Hopefully it carries through and we hear about that happening very soon. But the final thing to talk about is this season, since we are approaching our first game on Sunday. Obviously, we saw the Community Shield. Congratulations to Palace for winning that. And then we have the Super Cup coming up, and we'll finally see our Tottenham actually going to be more of a threat this season with a different manager in charge. But I just wanted to give a few of my own predictions based on what I've seen in the transfer window. Obviously, it's very difficult to make a lot of these predictions this early on because you don't know how managers are going to adjust. You don't know if managers are going to be sacked. Some of these players may look good in preseason or may look sorry in preseason, and then they blow up in the actual season once they get some more time to integrate themselves into the team. But my early doors prediction, first of all, relegation. I'm really hoping it's not going to be 3 up, 3 down again, but I will say it's looking pretty likely. If there was a club to stay up, I'm going to say Sunderland just because it feels like they've done a bit better business this summer. I don't really like Sunderland as a club, so I really hope it doesn't happen. But based on the transfer windows, I mean, all three of them have done business, I think. From what I can tell, decent business. I think Leeds has probably been the least active. Could be mistaken about that. But if any club is going to go down this season that has been in the Premier League for the past few seasons, I feel like I'm leaning toward either Brentford or West Ham. Because Brentford, obviously, losing Thomas Frank is going to be a blow. And I think the manager that they replaced him with doesn't seem to be that experienced. So we don't really know much about him, which means he could do amazing or he could do awful. Plus them losing Mbeumo. I can't remember if they've held on to Visa or not. I know that there was a lot of talk that he was leaving. And they also lost Norgard, I think his name is, in the midfield. So they have lost a lot, and I don't think they've really done much to replace. So I could see them really dropping off and possibly being in relegation battle this season. And then for West Ham, not really heard much about what they're doing in the transfer window, and they still have Graham Potter in charge, and I think Graham Potter's a trash manager. But who knows? There were a couple players that I don't think really clicked last season that might find their form this year. But I think they and Brentford are the two that are most liable to be in that relegation battle. But moving on higher up the table, let's talk about European spots. So starting at the bottom in 7th, I know it's not always a European spot, but that's where I consider the bottom of the European spots. I'm going to go with Bournemouth. I know they've lost players that people think are a huge detriment to them, but I think they've still got enough there, and I think Areola has shown his quality as a manager. So I think they'll still be able to push and find themselves in those European places this season. Plus, I think the gap between the top 4 and the rest is going to grow. So I think it's going to be the top 4, and then kind of 5th through, I would say, 13th is probably going to be pretty close. So I think Bournemouth is going to be one of the best of that group of mid-table clubs. 6th place is going to be a weird one, but it's going to go to either Tottenham or Man U. And I know that's weird because you would think if I'm predicting one to be 6th, the other one would be 5th or 7th, but I'm not doing that because really both of them are kind of in their own microcosm in my mind. For Tottenham, they just had some success, so some of these players may have a boost. Thomas Frank may come in and do phenomenally, or they're going to be reminded that they're just Tottenham and we'll see the drop-off happen. I think there will be a bit of a struggle because fighting in the Champions League is not going to be as easy for them as going through the Europa League was. And Thomas Frank, there could be some growing pains, so there's a potential that they end up in that 6th spot or they end up in mid-table. For Man U, kind of the same thing. With Amorim, it does feel like maybe he has a bit of an idea of what's going on here. He's kind of ruthless in what he's doing at the club. He's not letting players have a lot of power, so that is positive for them. I think Cunha, talented pickup, but his attitude could be a problem. Mbeumo, good pickup for them. Sesko, obviously a lot of hype around him, but that's typical for every Man U signing, whether he's good or not. So they're very up in the air too. They could be in and around the European spots, or they could be fighting relegation again this season. So it's just hard to say because Man U is such a weird club. Because you never really know what you're going to get from them every season. I know all the Man U fans are going to be hyping themselves up because of those signings. Personally, I don't see it. I don't think they'll be anywhere near the top 4. But again, I think that 5th through 13th is going to be kind of a lot of clubs in there, and they could be in that mix, or they could be closer to the bottom and struggling to stay out of relegation. And then 5th, I'm actually going with Newcastle there. I think even though they've dealt with a lot of issues in the transfer window this summer, there's still a chance they could lose Isak. I think Eddie Howe's a good manager, and I think a lot of these players, there's going to be something for them to prove this season, especially because there were so many rejections. I feel like that's going to sort of motivate them a bit to be like, let's show why we are good enough, even if we didn't get all those players. It could have the opposite effect, to be fair, but I don't think that's going to happen. So 5th is my prediction for them. Now into the top 4, and this is where I'm going to make a lot of rival fans mad, and I don't care. Arsenal in 4th place. I just look at it, I think, even though everybody's saying Arsenal's had this amazing transfer window, they're saying Gyökeres is the best signing ever, they finally have their striker. I don't think he's going to live up to the hype. I just don't. He could, but personally this feels like another one of those Arsenal or Man U signings that the media is in love with. He's the signing of the season. And then you get to the end of the season and he scored 12 goals. He's got him in the top 4. There was a title challenge at one point, and then they just sort of dropped off because he wasn't quite good enough. That's just how I personally see it happening. And 3rd, I'm going Man City, because I think while they have had a better transfer summer, I think they will be challenging for the title again this year because I don't think Pep is going to have 2 years in a row where they were not even close to it. I still don't think they have enough from these summer signings to really push them over the edge and get them to the top. So I think 3rd is more so where they'll be. Second, I'm going to say us. I think Chelsea have enough in them to be in second to push for the title as well. I don't think we have quite enough to get over the edge of it, but I think we will be in and around there throughout most of the season. I think second place will be a good finish for us, even if it's not the title. But first, I do think Liverpool is going to repeat and win the title again. I don't think it's going to be as comfortable for them this season as it was last season. I think there will be a push from the other three that I mentioned in the top four. But Arne Slot seems to have a way of grinding out results that you need to have as champions. And I haven't seen that from Maresca. Didn't see that from Pep last season at all. I think Arteta as well, we've seen when it comes down to it, when the pressure's on, he can't quite find a way to get over the line. So Arne Slot, of the three, is the only manager of those top four that I mentioned that I think has shown that quality to find the way to get the wins, to find the way to grind out results whenever they're needed. And I think they have improved. I wouldn't say they are best in the world after these signings, but I do think they will be slightly better this season. And I think because of that, they will have improved just enough to stay ahead of the three behind them and manage to grind out the wins to get to the end of the season and be champions again. So I hope I'm wrong. Obviously, I want Chelsea to win the title. I don't think we're quite capable of that yet. We'll see what the signings bring that might push us over the edge and get us to that title. But I will say I'm very excited for this season, which is not something that I felt in a while. So that's a good feeling to have. I think looking at this season, what I want out of it, I want us to be comfortably top four. No danger of slipping out like we did last season where we basically confirmed our top four position on the final day. I want it to be where we are always top four throughout the entire season and nobody is coming close to overtaking us that's fifth or below. And I do want us to win a domestic cup. I think the FA Cup is probably the one I'd prefer. But even just the Carabao Cup, we've not won a domestic cup in a while. I would love to get one of those in our trophy cabinet this year because we are starting to see the trophies come in with the Conference League and then the Club World Cup. So I would like to see us pick up another one this season. And from there, we can build on and hopefully next season, we're ready for that title challenge. We're ready to win the league. From there, just keep growing, keep getting better, keep improving, eventually just be the best in the world. That's what I think a lot of us want us to be. So I realize this might be a bit of a long one. Apologize for that, but I just had a lot to talk about today. Like I said, I will do a preview of the Crystal Palace match. Probably go up on Saturday, so look forward to that. But with all that being said, let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What are your thoughts on our transfers? What are your hopes for the season ahead? Let me know. We can talk about and discuss all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Chelsea previews, reviews, and talks. And until next time, I hope you guys have a great day. And I will talk to y'all later. Peace out.